In the quiet corners of small towns, hidden behind plastered walls and painted smiles, lie stories no one was ever meant to uncover. Stories buried in silence. Stories sealed in concrete. And tonight, a file is opened that was never meant to see the light, a case built on 7 years of lies, whispers, and a disappearance that unsettled an entire nation. A husband who begged for answers, who cried for help on television, who stood inches above a secret far darker than anyone imagined. This is not just another missing person case. It is a descent into obsession, manipulation, and a truth that refused to stay buried. Welcome to Dark Files. It begins in March 2017, in the coastal Irish town of Youghal, County Cork. A place where the sea is calm, the streets are small, and neighbors know each other by name. It is here that 45-year-old Tina Satchwell vanishes, quietly, cleanly, almost surgically. One morning, her husband, Richard Satchwell, walks into a local station and reports that she has gone away for a while. He claims she left with a suitcase, took several €1,000 in cash, and told no one where she was going. His story is calm. Too calm. Like a rehearsed line from a bad script. Days pass. Then weeks. Then months. Investigators knock on doors, check ferry ports, airports, bus stations. But Tina leaves no trace, not a phone record, not a sighting, nothing. According to Richard, she simply walked away. But to the people who knew her, that never sounded right. Tina was close to her family, always calling, always sending messages, always checking in. The idea that she would vanish without a word is impossible to accept. Yet Richard continues repeating the same story. He appears on talk shows, pleads for her return, speaks lovingly about the woman who must have needed space. He gives interviews, invites cameras into his home, cries on cue. Some viewers feel sympathy. Others sense something off, something rehearsed, controlled, strangely performative. But without evidence, no one can say for certain. 2 years pass. Then 3. Then 5. And throughout this time, Richard resists every police request to search their home. He refuses repeatedly, insisting that any search would be an invasion of privacy. His refusals raise questions. But the law requires consent, or probable cause. And for years, investigators have neither. But behind closed doors, a different story brews. Neighbors begin sharing small observations. Strange noises in the night. Furniture being moved. Long, unexplained absences from the house. Richard carrying heavy bags turned from the garage. None of it enough for a warrant, but enough to linger in the back of everyone's mind. Meanwhile, Tina's family lives in torment. They light candles, hold vigils, beg for answers. Her sister, in every interview, says the same haunting words: "Tina would never leave us. Something happened to her. Someone knows." And every time, she subtly implies the same suspicion, without ever naming it. By 2023, the case grows cold. Then, in October, something changes. Police receive new intelligence, something never publicly disclosed. Enough to finally justify a full forensic search of the Satchwell home. For 6 long years, the house had been untouched, protected by Richard's refusals. But now, officers arrive with warrants, equipment, cadaver dogs, and specialists drilled in ground-penetrating radar. The world watchers live footage as forensic tents rise around the quiet Youghal residence. At first, Richard watches from a distance. Calm, collected, hands in his pockets. But as officers begin bringing in heavier equipment, as they move inside and toward the staircase, his composure begins to crack. And then, after only 24 hours of searching, investigators make a chilling announcement: they have found skeletal remains buried beneath the home, carefully concealed behind brickwork. Remains positioned and covered in a way that indicates deliberate placement. Suddenly, everything changes. The case shifts from missing person to suspected homicide. Officers immediately arrest the primary person of interest, Richard Satchwell. Under interrogation, he collapses almost instantly. No more television smiles. No more smooth rehearsed phrases. The mask drops. He confesses that Tina died during a domestic incident, a vague, evasive phrase used to soften what really happened. He claims it wasn't intentional, that it was sudden, that panic consumed him. He admits he hid her body, sealed it behind a wall, and lived above her burial site for over 6 years. Prosecutors say the truth is far more disturbing. They reveal injuries inconsistent with accident, evidence of compression, blunt force, and actions that could never be explained away as spontaneous. But perhaps the darkest detail: for years, he maintained the deception flawlessly. Every interview, every tearful appearance, every plea, performed while knowing exactly where she was. Neighbors confess in shock. Richard attended barbecues, chatted casually, smiled and waved, all while a corpse rested meters away. In some cases, only one thin wall separated his daily routine from the secret he had entombed. The trial becomes a national spectacle. Courtrooms overflow. Tina's family sits in the front row every day, silently demanding justice. Audio from interviews is played publicly for the first time. Every contradiction in Richard's story is exposed. His timeline collapses under scrutiny. His emotional performances on television are shown to jurors, side by side with forensic findings. The contrast is devastating. The judge calls the concealment deliberate, calculated, and extraordinarily cruel. The prosecution calls it 7 years of manipulation. Tina's family calls it the final betrayal. In the end, Richard receives a life sentence. But for many, it is not enough, not compared to the long years of false hope, unanswered questions, and the agony of knowing Tina was lost before the search even began. And so the story ends where it began, in a quiet Irish town now marked forever by a crime hidden beneath concrete and lies. Tina's loved ones finally receive an answer, though not the one they prayed for. Her name becomes a symbol, a warning, and a plea for vigilance in cases where one person holds all the power over the truth. Some truths stay buried for days. Some for years. And some, for as long as the person who buried them can keep breathing. But every lie leaves a crack, and every secret eventually reaches the surface. Tina Satchwell's story is a reminder that evil doesn't always hide in forests or dark alleys. Sometimes, it lives in the same home, sits at the same table, and looks into the same camera, insisting it is innocent. If this case shook you, if something in this story stayed with you, leave a comment below and make your voice part of the record. If you want more stories the world tried to forget, subscribe, like, and keep your eyes sharp. Because in the shadows of the ordinary, the darkest files wait quietly for someone to open them.